Every portrait I've seen that is done by Danielle Cohen is full of so much message. I don't know how she does it, but somehow she uses her camera lens to drop the veil that usually stands in front of her subjects. It's no surprise that her workshops have a similar effect on the women who partake in them. And Danielle is a co-founder of Amulet Magazine, which has a similar purpose. Before we pressed record on today's episode, Danielle told me, I have to be honest, I'm feeling a little raw and scattered today. And if I know one thing about being brave, it's that you have to start where you're at. So that's where we started today's episode. Raw, scattered, and a little bit honest, with the brilliant photographer, matriarch, mom of four, and creative powerhouse that is Danielle Cohen. You're listening to Bare Naked Bravery, a weekly podcast hosted by me, Emily Ann Peterson. As a singer-songwriter, author, teaching artist, and creative entrepreneur, I encounter some really fascinating stories. I'm on a mission to reveal the depth and width of bravery and its benefits to creatives like yourself. More than ever today, our world needs bravery, unique bravery, from everyone. This is the place where you find it. There is no script or censorship today because that's how these facets of bare naked bravery are in real life. So if you're listening with little ears nearby, please know that some episodes may contain mature language and subject matter. One of the easiest ways you can share bravery with the world is to send this episode to a friend or two. Send them an email, text, or tweet. Tag them in one of my Instagram posts. My handle is Emily Ann Pete. Or leave us a review on iTunes. It takes seconds and can be done from your phone right now. Again, we need more bravery in the world. So let's be brave together. Okay, so here we are. Both of us are kind of feeling scattered right now. And I'm reading this book called The Essentialist by Greg McKeown, which you've already read.
I have. It's wonderful.
What did you glean from it? We'll do a mini book review.
Okay. So, it has been over a year. And in that year, I've moved. I've taken my dad to the other side, and we've had a lot of transitions. So what I'm going to tell you is probably the most valuable because it's the stuff that we're left with after everything, right? So essentially, it really drove home the point for me of decluttering, and not necessarily in all the ways we hear all of the time, but just getting rid of the noise and being more potent and giving less more instead of giving more less. Yes. And that's such a huge thing for me because, number one, I'm a multi-passionate person by nature, and I have 4 children. So it's already sort of a setup for me to be dilute in a way, or at least it's a possibility. It creates a very ripe ground for me to dilute myself.
Yeah. So, the premise of the book is all about being an essentialist.
What matters most.
What matters most, and do that thing.
Yeah, and do that thing.
And it is so difficult because I, like you, am a Venn diagram. I'm a human Venn diagram.
Totally. It's funny. I use that exact thing to describe myself.
And it is so tricky to figure out what that one thing is.
So what's at the center of your Venn diagram?
Creativity and courage. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Even more zoned in, it's probably communication with the purpose of connection.
With connection, I was going to say, yeah. Right.
And I think, and that ties to the songwriting that I do. It ties to the podcast, to the blog, to like everything that I do. I can see it tying to that one thing, the artful, connective communication. But there are so many ways that can play out, and that is so distracting to me because it takes all of that energy. It's a lot of upkeep.
It's a lot of upkeep. Yeah.
So, okay, so you're the expert because you've got 4 kids. And
Oh,
I would say that you're the expert in that because you've got
let's
4
just say I'm
kids.
seasoned.
Okay. What have you, and since finished reading the book, a lot of things have happened. How have you applied some of that stuff of doing the one thing more?
I mean, the truth is, first of all, and this is an important one for me, that there's always a lot happening in my world. I'm sort of the crux or matriarch of this family, both my immediate and any extended. So I can't wait for there to be not something happening, right? And my kids, my 4 children range from one who turns 21 in December, one turns 6, and then I have a 15 and 18-year-old. So really different life stages and things like that. So in all of that, for me, it's kind of 2-part. On the one hand, making sure that I embrace and allow and celebrate that I am multi-passionate and that I'm not linear. I don't function, even though I sometimes crave those structures and systems to be in place, mostly so that I can be free to unravel inside of them, right? Mm-hmm. And so knowing all of that and allowing for all of that and still seeking and striving for where can I be more potent? Where can I be more effective? Essential, yes, but just like what you were saying before about the Venn diagram, and I have a very similar core, and I think a lot of us do. And like you said, that can still become sort of dilute in a very pragmatic sense because we can take it so many directions. So the sense of essential self is pretty clear. And then my next question, and I guess it's a part of living in that question, is how do I stay, become, and remain potent? And sometimes that's the best I can do is ask the question.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And when all these wonderful things come my way, inquiries, invitations, possibilities, that's where I get to weigh it against, first and foremost, does it match that core set of essentialness? And then secondly, can I show up for it and still be potent?
You talk a lot about the concept of showing up.
I do.
Talk to me specifically about it, because I've read some of your stuff about it.
Well, I mean, I think that's the brave part to me, being able, every time, I'll just use photography sessions as an example. For the most part, and I mean, I cannot think of an exception to this. And somebody asked me about this the other day, like, what do you do when somebody walks in front of your lens and you just kind of don't feel good about them, or you're kind of, turned off by them? And I looked at them and I said, I literally have fallen in love with every single person who stepped in front of my lens. I cannot, unless I'm blanking, I cannot think of a person who that's not true for and with. And for me, that's because they all show up. And when somebody shows up, they're present, they're vulnerable, they're just there. That's really, I think, about all it takes to connect. And how can you not love once you've connected? How can you not see the light and see the good and see the beauty? And maybe that's, I don't know, it sounds a little silly when I say it out loud to me, but that is genuinely my experience. And I, just as a little aside, I never, ever, ever do mini sessions. I have a client that I really love, and she phoned me and asked me if I would come up to Tahoe, where she was doing an event, and photograph these 15 women in one day. And it was going to be, I mean, really, really, really fast turnaround. Not really my thing. And I love her and I love the location, and just, it felt right. So I said, okay, sure, I'll come up and do it. I'm telling you, it was amazing. Every single one of those women. And we had, I think, 20 minutes together. I could give you some powerful love story about each one of them. And it has everything to do with the fact that they showed up.
Yeah. First of all, back to essentialism. You don't do mini sessions usually. That's essentialism right there.
Right.
Because Because I imagine this is probably some of your reasoning is that it's hard to fall in love 15 times in a day.
I was wiped. I was like, whoa, that was a lot. And yeah, no, it's not really my gesture.
Yeah.
In that, now I can do it in a group, in a teaching environment or something like that. It's different. But yes, I think essentialism is very much, and this is not always as easy as knowing what we love. Essentialism is very much knowing what we don't want to do. It's knowing what we're going to say no to. It's learning, that's not always as easy. I'll just speak for myself. That is a work in progress for me, is saying no
Yeah.
to things. That's not for me.
What have you said no to recently?
Oh, what have I said no to recently?
I fully agree, by the way, that that's part of essentialism is knowing the no's.
Yeah, right.
Because if you KNO, know all of the no's, the NO's, then the yeses will reveal themselves.
Yes,
Like
absolutely.
everything that's left after you've said no a bunch is just a yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. I have said no recently, and I felt like it was a real process for me. I said no to a couple of people who reached out to me and asked for me to work for them for free or trade.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really, really hard. And out of it came this mantra that actually, when my oldest turned 20, I wrote him this letter. And in the letter, I had this panic moment when I sent him off to college that I hadn't done and said all the things I needed to do and say. So lucky kid got like a 20-page letter from me for his 20th birthday, just in case I didn't get these things. And one of the things in there was, be sovereign so you can be benevolent. And it was interesting because as I was writing the letter, I very quickly transitioned to, oh my gosh, this is all the things that my teenage self, my young adult self needed to know, right? And still oftentimes needs to know. And so that particular mantra has been something that I've sort of had to look at those things that I'm saying to my child and go, are you doing this yourself? And the truth is that, especially around some money things, I think we've got a lot of stories out there in the world around scarcity mindsets and things like that. And there's a lot of truth to them. And there are a lot of brilliant people out there really doing good work there. And I also think that sometimes people just, for a variety of reasons, need support and need help. And I want to meet them. I've been that person so many times in my life. And I still am. I'm trying to always work towards that, truly being sovereign, being able to care for my family completely so that I can give even more and have that peace. And I also know the flip side of depletion, and it's taken my body down. It's taken me down financially. I really feel like I know those. And so when somebody comes to me with a request like that, having to really look at, am I capable? This has nothing to do with them. Am I capable of giving right now? Do I have enough? Maybe not even a full cup, but do I have enough of a cup to pour out from without creating depletion? Because I can't, then I'm robbing from.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a mini ebook or a blog. I don't know what it would end up coming out as, but I have in my head this like set of steps for nonprofits and how they should reach out to musicians or artists to give to their fundraiser, all this kind of stuff. Because I'm constantly saying no in as magnanimously as I can.
Right.
Because sometimes doing the gig for free or spending the time doing that volunteering, it actually doesn't help them because I come out, the exchange is not an even exchange, be it like love, energy, money, whatever. But I think a lot of that no that we give out to the free trade requests, that no has to start from, do I have the generosity in me?
Right. And or what is the truly generous thing to do right now? Like generosity is a core value of mine. So that is one of the things that I have to add. That is a way for me to frame the question that helps me answer it rather than going down a path of making it either all about them in the sense that, but they need this and I want to give this to, okay, but that's not really the question right now. The question is, what's the most generous thing I can do?
Right.
And sometimes the most generous thing I can do in that moment is to get really honest about where I am and that I can't give anything more at the moment. I mean, I'll turn away paid sessions. You know, I had a couple of very, very, very full months this summer. And it was a real reminder for me that it's not the way that I want to work. I want to be potent. I want to be really, truly of service and valuable, both when I have a camera in my hands or in teaching or writing or in my personal life. And that means getting real about capacity.
Yeah.
And I don't mean limited thinking. I don't mean anything like that, but I just mean being real about capacity.
Yeah. The being honest about how authentic you can be, because if you are lying to yourself about whether you can or can't do the thing, the trade agreement or taking on the new client or the new project or whatever, if you start lying to yourself about whether you can do it,
right,
the work that comes out of you is less authentic.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of times, and maybe not always, but a lot of times I think we, the ones who are having a hard time saying no, are coming from a scared place of, oh, I don't want to make them mad. I would love to work with this person, but the timing's not right, but I should just bend and make it work. Or, or some other version of, I don't want this to go away. If I say no to this opportunity, am I closing the door to the flow? There's so many ways that we can just scare ourselves into inappropriately taking on more than what's really healthy and right at that moment.
Right. Let's talk about now. Let's flip it a little bit. So rather than talking about the lack of potency, let's talk about what is it like when you feel really potent in your work and in your life?
I think one of the biggest things is that I'm energized. I feel truly energized. I feel that sense of life force, like it's the opposite of depleted. It's that I'm fed. I'm awake. I'm not surging with adrenaline, although I may have a little bit because butterflies are lovely. And, sometimes that happens, right? When we're excited and it's coming, but it's different. It's not fried. I think really, truly, I have a really sensitive body and I've crashed really, really hard a couple of times in my life. And it's probably going to be an ongoing process, but I also recognize that there are gifts in that. There's a lot of gifts in that, really. And one of them is that when I am potent, I am fed physically and I am energized. And that's very, very different. Doesn't mean that I'm not tired. It doesn't mean that after a good days of hard work that I'm not spent, right? But that is different than fried. It's a very, very different feeling.
Yep, I fully agree with you. And I think in episode 1, we talked with Naomi Washira. She's a singer-songwriter, and both she and I were agreeing that like the coolest part about being a singer-songwriter or a musician is being in the studio, because you come home from like a 16, 18-hour day and you're completely exhausted, but you can't sleep.
Right.
You're so stoked.
Right. But now, okay, so now if you did that, and granted everybody's constitution and everything is different, but if you did that day in and day out.
Oh yeah, that's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable, right? So that's where it's like knowing that, okay, this is where it really works for us, that we're multi-passionate, multi-talented, right? It really works for us because when we understand that, we can say, okay, I can do X amount of studio days during this season because we are so cyclical. And when I say we, I'm kind of generalizing us as creative women.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do think it is a little bit of, I think we're created differently and we create differently, right?
Yeah, I agree.
So, once we get we can't get overly attached and be rigid because we can change and we typically do, but we can get a general sense of the rhythm that works for us. So I can handle X amount of studio days and this many podcast interviews and this, because it sounds like you work in a similar way. For me, there's like sessions and teaching and things like that are my out in the world expressive parts, and I love them. Editing and writing and things like that are in my little cave all by myself, and I love it. It's both, right? So, and it's a beautiful in and out breath.
Do you know what your Myers-Briggs type is?
I am very split EI.
Huh?
And I think I'm an EINFP, but I'm almost a split on the F and the T.
Okay.
I tend to go to T when I'm in a trauma state.
Got it. I'm just curious because I am the same. I'm exactly the same way. Like I love the art, the one-on-one, like
right.
Put me in a room with an instrument and I'll be there for 5 hours and come out with a song and I'll just be completely jived for life. But I also really enjoy the connection part and doing the house shows or doing these interviews, and the ebb and the flow between that has to be even.
Yeah.
Or else I either become unhealthily agoraphobic.
Right. Yes.
Or I just get really exhausted.
Right. Agreed. Very, very similar.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your Myers-Briggs?
I'm an INFJ.
See, I love the J. Oh, that J just gives you all kinds of structure and ability to create system. I love that.
And it's been only until recently that I have owned up to it. Because I've been in a season of my life where I've been surrounded by a lot of P's.
Yeah.
People who, or systems of thought that
P's are better.
Yeah, that like
right.
That making a judgment about anything is like wrong or over exaggeration or something like that. But only recently have I just been like, oh my gosh, I should completely have a judgment about this.
Isn't that funny?
And that has nothing about you. It says everything about me. I have a judgment about this.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny how many things like that we can carry, right? That we can be sort of defensive or denial or push away that are actual gems about ourselves because somewhere we bought into a story.
Yeah. Oh, it's so great to let go of that stuff. It's great. It feels awesome.
That's part of essentialism.
Yes.
Right? Because you're shedding the shit that doesn't matter.
Yep.
And it's just getting in the way of what's really true.
Yeah. There's other elements of how you can incorporate your personality or this works with the creative women too. Like we're on a flow, we're on cycles, be it creatively, physically, or otherwise. And working the flow is different than working against the flow.
Right.
And you can be a lot more powerful creatively if you are working with it or floating with it, I should say, rather than constantly trying to swim upstream for the sake of swimming upstream.
Yeah, that's so true. Do you always recognize when you're in that?
Fighting it? Mm-hmm. Usually usually after I get like 20% into the full on fight, I'm like, why is everything so hard? Oh, wait, it's because I'm trying to force something.
Right.
You're like, okay, no, let it happen. I think that's part of the judgment versus perceiving, the J versus the P, that like my nature is to make a judgment, like a hard and fast left or right decision. And sometimes the flow of whatever I'm working with doesn't want to go a 90-degree left. It wants to take a 60-degree left. And so I tend to try to push it if I am not thinking too much about it. So before we jump back into our conversation today, I want to let you know about a free class I've put together for you. especially if you've been running yourself ragged with everything required to be successful as a creative entrepreneur or an artist or a musician or fill in the blank. You can register for the class for free by going to businessofbravery.com/free-class. So if I'm being honest with you, you're probably exhausted by the whole idea of self-promotion because you're doing it wrong. And I know there's a seemingly endless list of things we have to do when we're running a creative business, but numbing how awkward it feels to promote yourself and bringing yourself to the point of total exhaustion, it's not the solution. So in the class, we talk all about the ingredients inside of your unique self-promotion recipe, and you'll get to hear a little more about my own journey with all things self-promotion, self-image, and personal bravery. You can sign up for the class for free, again, by going to businessofbravery.com/free-class. So if you know your work is awesome, but you feel like you're figuratively yelling at brick walls or going down burnout highway at 100 miles per hour or not getting the response you'd like from your attempts to put yourself out there, then I'll see you in class, because bottom line, we really need your work out there in the world. And in turn, this means we need you to show up for it with your whole brave, kick-ass self. And we need you to do that every day. So go ahead and visit businessofbravery.com/free-class, and let's get back to the conversation. With the work that you do with creative women, talk to me a little bit about how you see that flow appearing in this work that you do with them.
Oh, well, this may or may not answer that, but it certainly is a big piece of it for me. And one of the things is that there is no not creative woman.
Agreed.
I actually think the same applies to men. I think as humans, it's a different expression, but I think that, and I'm not a man, so it's just different. But the bottom line is we're human, therefore we are creative. We are creating everything all the time. And I don't mean the stuff that's out of our control. And I'm not saying that, I don't mean that in a law of attraction sort of way, right? I mean it in we're creating something all the time. We're creating what kind of day we want to have. We're creating what's for dinner or whatever. So I think one of the first and most important things is just even giving people, women in my case, an opportunity to say, I'm creative. Because there's so many that carry this story of I'm not creative. I'm one of them. I grew up really being praised for intelligence and never, ever, ever being seen. It just was never acknowledged that there was a creative element to who I was. And I'm not even sure where. I don't have that story that the time the teacher shamed me or anything like that, but I managed to very early on decide that I wasn't a creative person. And I walked around in awe of those who I saw that were. And that's just not an unfamiliar story, right? We hear these things a lot. And it's so sad. It's so sad because what we know now is that creativity is essential, period. And as is expression. And they go so hand in hand. And when you can marry the two, when you can consciously create a space, so like this is the work that I love to do, consciously create a space where women are given permission slips to express themselves in a creative way. I just feel like it really, really opens the door to flow, to that what else is there, what else is next. I mean, it just creates this beautiful opening. Really.
The permission element. How did you give yourself permission to be creative?
So in some ways, okay, so there's a few different things here. One is sometimes I just pretend I'm not and keep doing it anyway, right? So rather than getting caught in the conversation, it's almost like how I would treat a small child, that's telling me no about something that's clearly a yes, or telling me that their shoes are green when they're really red. And they're not going to put their shoes on unless I agree that they're really red or really green or whatever, right? I might just say, okay, And I'm not saying that they're right, and I'm not saying that they're wrong. I'm just not engaging in that conversation, and I'm continuing to put on the shoe. And sometimes that's what I have to do with myself. When all of those voices come up of, you got nothing, you're not creative. And I mean, I'm vicious up in my head. It is not pretty, the conversations that can go on. So sometimes, rather than engaging that bully that may very well kick my ass, I just sort of let it keep doing its chatter and keep doing my work anyway. As long as somebody's showing up and I have a genuine, generous desire to be of service, I'm going to do it. As long as I feel moved to capture a beautiful piece of anything that I see in the world, I'm going to do it. And that's how that works for me. And that was kind of it just sort of incrementally happened. I mean, specifically with photography, very, very early on, it was something that I always loved. It was something that I always did. And about 15 years ago, I created a photography business card. And along with that, a business, right? But not really.
I love how everything starts with the business card.
Right? It does. Well, especially, you know what, in 15 years, we're going to say, well, I started a website. Or
yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just, it totally, right?
It's the figurative shingle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And at the time, I was a single mom with 3 little boys. From the time I was very, very young, I saw myself as a healer. That was the work I was going to do. I was going to do very literal, hands-on, holistic healing. And I did a lot of that work, and it did not energize me. It depleted the fuck out of me, actually. It wasn't sustainable, you know? So when my boys were little, photography being this natural gesture, I created this business card so that I could do it for trade to get them things that I wanted for them, lessons, private school, stuff like that. But I never, ever embraced it as my career path because, number one, I'm not a creative person. Number two, it's surface and appearance oriented and all about stuff. And I'm in Southern California, so that felt really in my face, right? And it didn't line up with the healing aspect of things. And yet it was a functional piece, just like I had gotten a job doing accounts payable and many other things, right? So I did it and I enjoyed it. And years later, after many iterations of lots of different things and kind of piecing together all of my skill sets, I was producing a magazine with a couple of other incredibly creative, wonderful women. And I really was about making sure that it all happened. So I was a big part of the vision and the curating, but I wasn't at all interested in putting any of my work into it. And yet, whenever we needed images for things or whatever, I would step up and create them because it's what I love and it's what I do. And it's almost like what you were saying about fighting the flow rather than just, oh, you mean I could just do the natural gesture? And that doesn't mean not working hard at it. That doesn't mean not really, really refining your craft and getting better and better as a skill. But allowing your natural gesture to just be the thing felt revolutionary. Almost where you're like, wait, that's it? Are you sure? So I just started allowing that to come to the forefront. And it was the most smooth and simple transition. And it doesn't even feel like there was a transition. It feels like it was there all along. And the only thing that I ever have moments of ew about are, well, I could have probably made my life a lot easier a lot sooner. And yet I really do trust all of those different segues and paths were necessary and part of the whole.
Yeah, I think a really big part of creative courage and bravery is listening to the constraints you have and letting the constraints guide you, not in like a woo-woo kind of way, but like, I have $10.
Yeah.
I can't spend $20 because I have $10. So I'm going to choose the options that align with that constraint rather than fighting and just going, oh, I wish I had $20. I just need 20.
Sure.
Just make the decision for the $10 decision And you can then face the next decision and take the next step. And maybe the next step will be $20. Maybe it'll be $5. You don't know. But at least you're not wasting all of that effort on empty hopes. But that's, I don't want to sound like such a naysayer, but it's true. Like there are some realities.
That's the capacity piece.
Yeah.
There's and you're talking about, I mean, that is very much essentialism again.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that there are times where we say, okay, so I have only $10 and this thing is $20. And so I'm going to take an IOU out because it's worth the risk. And I believe that the payoff is going to be there are times where we may choose to do that.
Right.
But it's about, like you're saying, knowing what the capacity, knowing the truth of what's there on a very pragmatic, tangible sort of what really is there, then making a conscious choice around it.
Well, and even taking the loan out for the next $10, that is an action that you take after owning up to the fact that
that's right. You can't do that right. You can't even do that step if you haven't looked at it and said, this is what's really here right now.
Right. Exactly. And I think that's a big part of, when I notice that I myself am fighting the flow with a capital T and F, the big step is going, okay, what do I have? What do I have control over? And what do I not have control over? Okay, great. I'm just going to let the things fall, drop the extra spinning plates that I don't need to keep spinning and the balls that I need to keep juggling, like pick the one ball or the three balls to juggle,
Right.
It makes it a lot easier, but it's not an easy practice by any means.
No, it's so interesting hearing you say that and how it's something that I think about a lot and I've thought about a lot. And sometimes I'll find myself going, yeah, and I would not have been able to do the things that I've done had I practiced that. Because the truth of the matter is, part of my owning my whole story and being really honest about who I am and where I've been is that I have very, very frequently done more or spent more energy and whatnot than was there to spend. And I've paid the price for that at times. And I've also benefited from that.
Right.
There's both. And I'm very clear at this season of my life, I'm done. I'm grateful for the younger me that did that. And for me, in a lot of ways, it's about what I was able to do and create for my kids. That had I been honest about what there was available, I couldn't have done it. Right? So I'm grateful for her and good for her. And because I love her and me and I love my future self, I won't do it anymore.
Right.
Right? Because that would just be like self-destruction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of 20-something versus 30-something versus 40-something versus 50-something. Like,
right.
There's that stage of life
yes.
that is for overexertion and being really energetic and taking a step back and, soaking it up and choosing the one thing like you and I are doing.
The only thing is I'm in the 40-somethings and where I have to, come to terms with is I feel so prolific in my desires and in my creative inspirations. And so taking a deep breath and centering back to what's an essential and keep going back to, okay, what's essential, and trusting, right? Trusting that if all of those other things that are feeling so exciting and all want to come through me, if they're meant to come through me, they will.
Yeah.
And if they're just meant to come into the earth, and if I don't do them, somebody else does, then that's okay.
Yeah. Yep. You got it.
Yeah. Not so easy though sometimes, right?
No, it's not. Well, okay. So one of my favorite questions that I like asking everyone is, what are you looking forward to these days?
Right along the lines with almost everything else we've talked about, I very intentionally slowed my calendar down for the end of 2016. I had a really, really, really big year, personally and professionally. And my intention was to slow this time down so that I could honor my promise to myself, number one. And also because I really want to look at proactively creating 2017 from a business standpoint in a little bit of a different way. And so I'm so excited about doing that. And yet I'm in the trenches at the moment around what does that really look like. And it's really tempting because when I go into the trenches of, okay, these are all the different things that feel like any one of them could be an essential one thing. How am I going to shed some of them to really do what I say I'm going to do, which is simplify it, be really fucking potent, and take good care of everyone, including myself, that comes my way.
Yeah.
But I'm living in full faith that I'm going to do it. So therefore, I'm very excited about it.
I love that. I am in the same boat. I am very much excited about what the next year has in store. So I hope that you let us know what you're up to when that time comes around. I don't want to pry because I know that like brainstormy season doesn't need any,
Well, I will say
speakers.
this. A couple of things are, it does look like me doing less sessions. And I hate to say more powerfully because I feel like they have been very, very powerful. But I think that there's room for even another layer of depth and potency to them. So that's one big shift for sure. Yeah. So I'll just say that for now.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
That's exciting. Well, I am so grateful that you joined us. This has been such a treat to me, for me personally, and I know everyone else will agree as well. And here's to working with the flow, huh?
Right.
Yeah.
And staying essential.
Yes, and staying essential. Wasn't that just fantastic? There were so many gems that Danielle laid down in front of us that I couldn't resist. I have made a little worksheet, but it's not a worksheet. It's actually just a download of all of the important questions that she laid out before us. And they're in the format so that you can cut them into cards and put them on your bathroom mirror or in your car somewhere. Basically, just as a reminder to keep asking yourself, how can I stay and remain potent? And how to be an essentialist when it comes to taking creative risks and putting yourself out in the world. I just want to thank Danielle again for joining us. It was such a treat. And I want to thank you for joining us as well, because there's so much out there in the world that you could consume. And you chose this. You chose this conversation with Danielle and I, and she and I together are both very, very grateful. If you want to keep in touch with Danielle or myself, you can go to our show notes for today's episode, which is available at barenakedbravery.com. And all of the links to Danielle's website and her Facebook and Instagram and my own social media sites as well, they're there in the show notes, as well as this awesome little download that I mentioned. And if you're feeling like you've got a little extra creative juice beyond just the little worksheet that I have for you, you can download the Bare Naked Bravery coloring book, which is available, as always, at barenakedbravery.com/color, COLOR. And you can get an awesome coloring book from 10 talented visual artists of all kinds from all over the world. It's super rad. And if you're digging the music in today's episode, that is because it's brought to you by my friends at Music Box Licensing, a premier creative music agency dedicated to finding and crafting unique soundtracks. To find out more information about all the artists, musicians, and other sponsors of the show, visit barenakedbravery.com/sponsors. If you're interested in becoming a sponsor, even if it's just a simple share via email or a tweet, then you can go to today's show notes for this episode at barenakedbravery.com And at the bottom of every episode, we've put a list of ways that you can help support the show. A review, an email, all of that. It counts. It really helps and it adds up. And the bravery that we discussed today with Danielle is worth sharing. It's so worth sharing. We need someone to remind us how to be essential. And we need someone to remind us how to take creative risks. And sometimes these conversations do that for us. So if you leave a review ahead of time, I thank you. I'm looking forward to being with you next week. We have some really awesome things in store for you. And until then, I have one message for you. It's this: be yourself, be vulnerable, be brave, because the world needs more of your bare naked bravery.